I started this, I guess, November 15th, 2003. And after I started writing about the Robertson family, I said, although I really wanted to have a neat and error-proof story for you, I couldn't. I would get a paragraph or two, and then I'd remember an important story that happened earlier, and I'd scratch it all out and do it again. I got pretty mad. And I just tossed the whole cotton-picking thing up. But I do have some of it on there. It says I have very few memories of my early life, but I am told that both my dad and mother were quite wealthy. They owned fertile farming land between the Strawberry and the White River. I think it was the White, and had a very nice home, including a brick barn, and I think electric lights. I remember stories of brown sugar for baking, and Spellman, and he's my oldest brother, snatching lumps for his palate. Imagine this in 1920. Then came the stock market crash of 1929. Payments due on one of the farms could not be made without borrowing money, a mortgage and land that was already paid for. There was no bailout, so Dad woke up one morning bankrupt with 6 children, no home, no money. Dad followed a dream to find land with no rocks or trees, which was supposedly in Oklahoma. He went to see this wonderful place and liked what he saw. He wanted to move his family there, so Grandpa Biggers, that was Mother's father, gave them $500, and off we went to this new region. One interesting detail of the trip was that Dad pawned his watch to buy milk and a loaf of bread and some bologna to feed us on the way. We had some engine trouble with the vehicle, a Model T Ford, I think. We arrived on a farm near Council Hill and met people that Dad was going to work for, and the Robertson family started a new life. The first thing the folks did was to buy a new stove and a sewing machine with the $500 from Grandpa Biggers. Dad then worked 10 hours a day for 10 days, and he took 10 hens for pay. The farmer gave us all the milk we needed, and that plus eggs was our staple. Mother, Lois, and I was recovering from typhoid fever. Being a child, I had a light case, but Mother and Lois were very, very ill. Due to the severity of her illness, Lois lost all of her hair. Imagine a young girl at a new school with no hair, and no wigs was available then. The kids taunted her, but in time she had new tresses and had more confidence. After a period of time, Dad found a farm to rent, and we were on our way. The name of the game was work, and work we did. Everybody worked. After we got to Oklahoma, Ewan was born. He had dark skin and dark hair, which was quite different from all the towheads. Dad had another worker. Our youngest brother was Herman Jean, who died of heart trouble in infancy. I just barely remember this at all. I just really do barely remember it. After Herman Jean died, that left 7 of us in the family that grew up to adults, and we lived on this little farm, and all the children walked to school, walked up about 1.5 miles probably through pastures, and caught the bus to go to school. And we stayed in this little school at Hitchta. And I guess I didn't tell you about my family. The oldest brother is Spellman, and he was killed at about, I think, the age of 37 in a car wreck. But we know now, we really feel now that he had a heart attack and died instantly in the car. And then my oldest sister Lois was a wonderful mother to all of us, I guess, because Mama had all these kids and she worked in the fields, and so Lois was our second mother. And then there was Thelma, and she was always diagnosing everybody, and so she got the nickname of Doc, and she still has it. We still laugh about Doc. And then JF was just older than me. And there was 2 years, 2 months, and 10 days between JF and Myrldean and Shelby. Shelby was younger than me, and then you and Elvis. And he was sort of the, I don't know, you and Elvis was you and Elvis, and he was a pretty good kid, but he's still kind of fun. He's still fun. And we all, we started picking cotton at about age 4 and started milking at about age 5, and we had to milk the cows every morning before we went to school. And Daddy was a really, really good daddy, but he did not milk. And if the school bus got stuck, when we got home at 10 o'clock or midnight or whenever it was, we had to go milk the cows. I remember that. And I think by the time we moved to Victor, which was a little school, we had a farm there that we rented, but it was really a good farm. Daddy was a wonderful farmer, and he had all these kids to do the work. But the fun thing that I remember about being at Victor was we all played basketball. And I think that when I was in the 4th grade was the time that I got to go into this room, and the teacher, who was also the coach, wrote all the names up on the blackboard that got to make the team, and that was my first time to make the team. I saw my name up there, and I'm pretty sure I was only in the 4th grade. Could have been the 5th grade. I was so little that you couldn't buy soup for me, and so Mama made my basketball suit. And we played basketball all through grade school. We played on Saturdays. Nearly every Saturday in the season we'd play basketball, and if there was enough room, the parents could get on that bus and go with us. And my folks did go. They went, and I don't remember how many games we played, but we would play nearly every Saturday. And my lunch usually, and I think probably all of my lunch usually consisted of maybe a 5-cent hamburger, and that's what I'd have all day. Our basketball, at the time I was playing, the court was divided into 3 sections. We had 2 guards and 2 forwards on one end, and 2 on the other end, and the middle was the, I've forgotten what we call it, was the middle. Anyway, I was all on the middle, and I got to intercept passes because I was so little. But I could jump high, and they'd take this basketball and sort of haphazardly throw it across, and I could grab it. And so, but then when I got bigger, I played forward all the time. We could only dribble one time, but you could take as many steps as you wanted to within that dribble. And so I love basketball, and I guess I might have been a pretty good little player, I don't know. I remember one time, and then when we went to high school, they had outlawed girls' sports. So I didn't get to play until we moved to Council Hill. Daddy bought this land at Council Hill, and I started to school there. Everybody thought I was smart, but there was only 12, I think, other seniors. I don't know. Anyway, the first day that I was there, the coach shoved all of us down at the other end and said, just do, and he had his team picked out, and pretty soon he said, you come up here. And so that was my introduction to being on the team, and I played basketball, and I remember Daddy and Mama never missed a game. I remember one day I was sitting on the bench for a little timeout, and I heard my daddy say, he was always sat behind me, he said, or the coach was sitting back there, and he said, I'd give my whole team for that little number 5. That was me. So it was a lot of fun. I always wanted to earn a gold basketball, and you earned those when you went to state basketball tournaments. Spelman got one, and Lois got one, even though later in life she would not ever think of putting on any kind of a suit. But I always wanted that, and I never did get one. And so I guess that was the end of my high school, and I guess I had a good time. Then when I thought that we'd go to college, Spelman and his wife, Loretta, she was a wonderful sister-in-law. They lived at Buffalo, New York. He could not get in the Army, but because he had a heart defect, but he taught propeller on the base. And they said that they would, if I'd come up there, that I could stay there. And Daddy didn't say anything, and he didn't say anything. Picked cotton all summer. One Saturday he came home at noon, and he said, "Dink, get your bags packed, and you can go up, and I'll take you to the bus station, and you can go to New York." I said, "I'm not going now." I said, "I'm not going. I don't have time. I don't have any clothes. I don't have anything. I'm not going." Then I picked cotton, stayed at the farm. I picked cotton all summer, and when fall came, I just told my daddy, I said, "Now, I may come back to see you sometime, but I'm never going to come back to farmer work." I said, I'm never going to do that. And I didn't. I went back to see him, and I don't like the farm, and I'm not going to live on a farm. But I did, and when I was in Oklahoma City, before I went to Oklahoma City, before I left Council Hill, the superintendent came out and wanted to know if I'd teach school. And I said, "I can't teach school." And he said, "We don't have anybody. All the men were in the Army." And so I taught school for about, I suppose, a month or 6 weeks, and then I moved to Oklahoma City and was going to get a job. And I stayed with Lois. And Thelma was there because Clayton was in the war too, and he was at France, I think, most of the time. And so Thelma and I stayed with Lois and the family. And I did get a job at a hospital, and I was transcribing the doctors' notes on their physical and their condition and stuff like that all the time I was there. I got $100 a month, and I gave $30 of that to Lois for room and board. And she would do my clothes also. She was just a wonderful sister. So I stayed there at the hospital, and I think I got a $10 raise one time. I think the most I ever made was $110. But I had to take my bus fare and my lunch and stuff out of that, so that's all the money I had. And I kind of think you young people might find that kind of strange. So, but then I met Everett that summer on a blind date, and there was a couple, and he was in Oklahoma City on R&R. Before he was going overseas. I didn't know he was going overseas, and I was pretty naive. But anyway, I think we had one more date or something before he went overseas. And then when we're corresponding all the time, he was over there. And then when he came back, we were still corresponding. And so he said something about he was going to school at Lincoln. And I guess we visited about it, I don't know, but anyway, I decided I was going to Lincoln and I was going to go to school. And so I went home and to see Mom and Daddy, and I got my clothes ready, and he took me over to, not to Council Hill, to Henrietta, I guess, some little town, and dropped me off, and he said, "Goodbye, Dink." And so I got on a bus and I went to Lincoln. And that's how I got up to college. And we dated on Friday nights. They had little dances, and that was a lot of fun. And the rest of the time he was studying, and he lived at the mortuary. and got his room and board, I think, for sweeping, for cleaning and everything. And then when we got married, or we talked about it, and came Thanksgiving vacation, probably the last night before the vacation, he said, I think we ought to get married. So I just thought that was all right. And we skipped classes and went down and had our blood test made and got ready and left in his little yellow car, drove to Grand Island, and he called a couple, and they had both been his teachers down at Dry Valley, I guess. And he told them we were going to get married, and would they stand up with us? And sure, they would stand up with us, and they did. And so just before the wedding, and we got it, they said, we'll get a minister, and they got the minister, and I believe his name was Holvertson. Anyway, we were going to get married around 7, I suppose, I don't know. So he gets in the elevator, and he goes down to get me some flowers. And it must have been on his way coming back. He told me that the elevator man begged him not to marry. So, but anyway, we got married, and we had supper at a hotel in Grand Island. And then the next morning, we got up and headed for his folks. And we told him, we got there, and I had my rings on. And he told me that George came around to him, that's Everett's brother, and he said, what's Myrle doing with those rings on? So he told his folks that we were married, and they were okay with it. And then the following day, we drove to Comstock, and I called my mother and dad. I told them that I was married, and I guess they were okay. But I can remember back when Lois got married, my dad just cried, and he said, he's just stealing my girl. She had gotten on a bus and went to California, on a train, and went to California and married Wilburn. And I can't remember when Thelma got married. He didn't put up much of a fight. He didn't put up any fight when I got married. I guess he was glad to get rid of me. I don't know. So that was it. We went back to Lincoln, and so the people who owned the funeral home let me move in there. And we had a basement, couldn't cook. So we had every breakfast out, and for lunch, of course, I was on the campus, and I'd stop at this little drugstore and have a bowl of soup, and it was 15 cents, I think, only 15 cents. And then I walked clear downtown. I had a job when I went to Lincoln as a secretary in a clinic, an orthopedic clinic. It was in the Sharp building. And so I'd walk down there and work until 5 o'clock. And then I'd go over to the hotel and work as a waitress until 9 o'clock at night. And then I'd go home and I'd do my studying, because we didn't have any money. I can't remember, I think that Everett got $90 a month from the government to go to college. And then when we got married, they gave us $120, so I was only worth $25 to $30. That's all the money we had. And so, and with that money, we ate out, and we fixed this little ledger. And everything we bought, we put in that ledger. And so, and the funny thing about it, kids, we found that ledger and got it out a couple of years ago, and it's just been really fun. But at the end of the month, if we had any money left, we might go out to dinner the last Saturday night of the month. If we didn't have enough money, we didn't go. So we just lived on that all the time. We were in school, and he got his prerequisites to go to mortician college, and when that was over, why, we headed down there. This ledger, it has just really been a lot of fun for them. And I suppose it had to start on December 1946, because we were married in the day or two before Thanksgiving. So I'll start and read a little of it. He even balanced it out. this is I'm not sure what the month is, but like February the 15th, breakfast was 55 cents, and gas was $2. Groceries was $1.52, and Alka-Seltzer was a quarter. And milk was 18 cents, and I had to buy hose. I'm not sure why. They were $1.35. Some of the other fun things was a Coke and peanuts, 10 cents. Supper was 92 cents. Every night nearly, we had supper at this fun little restaurant on O Street. And you got your meat, and we usually got pork chops. I think we got 2. And then we had hash browns, and I'd never heard of hash browns before. And we had a lettuce salad and coffee and a dessert for $1. And we had that nearly every single night. But so we didn't do bad for eats, I guess. Here on February 18th, here was dry cleaning, 41 cents. Dinner, 60 cents that night. Coffee in a roll was 10 cents. Supper was $1.17. But I guess he balanced it out every single month, and this is how I can tell you that whether we went out or not. Accounts receivable would have to be $386.66. Our expenses was $202.92. The balance of $183.74. Oh, we had a big money there. I thought all we had was 402 cents left, but cash on hand was $179.72, and he had a 402 era. I thought that was all we had. Popcorn was 29 cents, and it was Vicks popcorn. That little old man was down off, I think, on about 13th and O Street, or 1 block south of O Street would be in, maybe. And in the later years, as I understand it, some company asked him to join them, and he did, and they wanted his recipe, and then they kicked him out. And you can still buy Vicks popcorn today. And I'm pretty sure that's the same little old man, bless his little heart. Supplies, 50 cents. I don't have a clue what that was. Anyway, this little book, when you get time and want to have some fun, you read it through, because it's a mind-boggling experience from what you kids do today. Coffee and Coke again, 10 cents. I wanted to find this little thing where I bought a baby gift. I was telling Ruth about it. And it was Everett's good friends, the Pernies. And he said, now you be sure to buy them a nice gift. And I said, oh, I did. I said, I got a comb with a little pink handle and a brush, and it cost me $1. But I don't find it here, but I'm sure that's what it was. And so, but anyway, we kept that book through. Well, we kept this book a long time. It was 103 pages of it. No, longer than that. Good heavens. It was 115 pages in this ledger. Then we got all these 10-cent Cokes and stuff, and we did okay. Sometimes that's the best years of your life. We didn't have any money. We didn't spend any money. And I think that's probably what gets people in trouble today. They have $1, so they spend $1.25. Ruth is just about to laugh. I don't know where else to go with this story.
I think it's very interesting. You're just going with it. Can you tell me about when
I can't hear you.
Tell me about when you left Lincoln.
When I left Lincoln?
Yeah.
I can't remember if it would have been in December after the first semester was over, because we got in this little yellow car and drove home for Christmas. And that was first Christmas I was home after we were married, and only one other time did I ever get to go home Christmas. And that was when we had this little plane and all 5 of us got in. We started in the afternoon because of the fog. That was not a good trip. We flew to some little airport out of Salina, and it was dark, and the lights were shining, and we were still trying to get to Muskogee, so this was the second time we ever went home for Christmas, so only 2 Christmases. But back to the story about going to Lincoln, leaving Lincoln, and we went home for Christmas. And then my brother Spellman owned a grocery store in Fort Smith, Arkansas. So we left Mom and Daddy's and went down there and spent probably a day with them, and we got in this little old yellow car. Oh Lordy, that little old yellow car, and started for St. Louis, and we drove and drove, and something was wrong with the car, and we got through those little, I called them mountains, I suppose they're just molehills, but we would get up this little hill, and the darn car would start back and back. It was a horrible day, and we finally got into St. Louis. I think it was around 6 o'clock in the morning, and went in for breakfast. And then we found this little apartment, 1 room, in an apartment house. Little old man and woman owned it, and he was not a very good man, I don't think either, but I think there were 7 women that had rooms and sharing rooms up there, and we all just had 1 room, and Everett was the only man, so they let him have the bathroom in the morning early so that he could go get to school, and then the rest of us kind of used it as we could. And I got a job as a secretary in the Cadillac place. Those were the days you could not buy cars, but only special people got to get cars, like the big wigs. And so that was kind of a fun experience in there. And he worked part-time. He worked at a filling station and went to school, and I worked full-time at this Cadillac place. And we bought our car there before I left and had it painted black, because we were going back to Lincoln, and we were going to go in the mortuary business, and I had it painted. And so then we left and headed back for Lincoln.
What did you do when you were in St. Louis for fun?
We went to ball games, we went to baseball games, and he had never experienced being with people other than friends and neighbors, and that was some experience, I can tell you. We got on this streetcar, and he wasn't afraid of anybody, anything or anybody. But now that changed, because in the middle of the street there'd be people fighting with knives and stuff, and that's when Everett was, I suppose, the first time he was ever scared in his life. And so when he saw some of that, he would not let me be alone ever. But that's all we did, and saw hockey. He got really interested in hockey. So did I. I just got there and yelled. But he got to go because of some instructor in mortuary school was the team doctor. But that was the only thing we ever did. Everett had good grades, good grades, and his good friend from Auburn, and they're still friends, he got the high score, but I think he was only 1/10 of 1 point ahead of Everett through their year of mortuary college. And then they've been friends all these years. We came back to Lincoln, and of course we had no money, didn't know what to do, and Alan Casey, that was the friend. His dad owned 2 or 3 mortuaries around Nebraska, and so he just melted right into the funeral business and all that. They were fun friends. So that takes us to where? Back to Lincoln. I got a job as a secretary in the legislature Legislative Council, I think it was called. And then I was private secretary to one of the senators. And I worked through that legislative session. And one of my jobs when they all agreed and voted for the budget, I typed up the budget, and they locked me in a room by myself, and I typed it up. There could not be one single error on it. And I stayed in this room until I got this typed to perfection, and then they voted on it, and then it accepted it, and then it was printed. And that was called, I'm not sure what it was called now, but it was a pretty important book. And so that's what I did the first session. After we got back, maybe I even did that before we went to St. Louis, because I worked with the legislature for 2 sessions. I guess I did once before we went to St. Louis, and then when we got back. And I'm sure Everett told about the big snowstorm.
Some.
All right. We were up to his folks there, and oh, Lordy, I'd never seen snow in my life before. And I really thought, I prayed because I thought I was going to die. I thought I'd never going to get out of that house. And I had a job, and I was supposed to start, I suppose, on Tuesday morning, I don't know, maybe Monday, but I couldn't get out. And so when we finally drove the car over the snow, over the fence post to the Highway 183, and then we got back to Lincoln, and I started. That was my second session with the Legislative Council. And then when that closed, I got a job at Woodman Accident at an insurance company, and I was secretary to the vice president, I think. And then from there, don't know where it went. Don't know where it went after that. I guess we'll just call the story good.
That's right. So when you came back from mortuary science, Dad worked at Lincoln before you moved out to Broken Bow?
Well, we lived at the funeral home until he passed the state boards, and then he headed up to Lincoln, and to see, or maybe I guess he went up to talk to Stockham about a funeral home or something. Anyway, we bought this funeral home on February 14th, on Valentine's Day. But at this time, I was working for an accounting company. And of course it was tax season, and so he came up here, and I don't know, I think George was still at the war. I know he was, but we bought this funeral home, and I stayed down in Lincoln until April 15th, and then I moved up, and we bought the funeral home by then, and it was downstairs, and we lived upstairs. That was our first home in Broken Bow. We were just kids, and we didn't get much business. I can't remember. I think we only had 13 cases that year or something. I can't remember. But anyway, I was there, and we did a lot of volunteer work. Had to do that to meet people. We had to do that. And then we decided it was time we were going to have a family, and so had all of these kids. Still lived upstairs. Didn't have any heat in the wintertime if we had a funeral, because it had to be warm downstairs. It couldn't make any noise. Kids sat on the bed, and I read to them, so there wouldn't be a single footprint downstairs that you could hear. And then when I found out about Reba, I just said, this is it. I am not going to live upstairs anymore with 5 kids. And so that's when we got to move. Well, I guess actually, we'd already bought the funeral home downtown by then, and they rented the downstairs to a church. And I was still upstairs. And so then when I found out about Reba, I said, I'm not going to live up here again. Well, what are we going to do? I don't know what we're going to do, but I'm not going to live up here again. And so we kind of did a little remodeling and moved downstairs. And we stayed there till I think we were still downstairs when Lana went away to college. That was a sad day. That was my first kid to leave home, and it was really sad. Then, one by one, these kids left me and went away to school, and it broke my heart, but I knew they had to do it, and I told them they had to do it. You know, you've got to get out. You've got to get an education. You've got to be able to get along. When I was talking about Reba, and as the kids went away to school, it was okay. I was really busy. I answered the phones 24 hours a day, and I made ambulance calls, and I worked funerals, so I was busy, and it was okay until Reba left, and then that was the last, and I didn't know how to handle that, and I just called my friend Lou Freitag, and I said, you know, Reba left and went to college today, and I said, I'm not having a very good day. Can you come over for a foursome? And she said, no, but I'll get a foursome and you come over here. And that's how I handled the first day that Reba was gone, but it was okay. Ruth wanted me to tell what it was like being a young mother. And I can tell you an experience that a decision I made. I really missed my family, and I didn't get to go home. I didn't know what I was going to do up here. But I decided that I could learn to like Broken Bow and the people and be happy, or I could be really mean and not, you know, just say, I don't like this, and I just decided that wasn't the thing to do. So I was just going to be, fit right in, and that's what I did. And I love Broken Bow. I really love Broken Bow, but it was really hard for me to accept at first, because I was very close to my family, and I was a long ways from them, and I didn't know how I was going to get home. But that's the decision I made, that I'm going to love, I'm here, I'm going to love Broken Bow, and I still love it today. I think it's a wonderful place to be. And I'm glad that all of my kids like to come back to Broken Bow. They do. And the girls, you know, they never buy anything, ever, but they come back to Broken Bow, they buy these clothes and stuff, just like they've never been to town before. So that's the end of the game. I did a lot of volunteer work. I still love to do volunteer work, but I'm not healthy enough to do it now. But I loved working with youth, and I had a 4-H club for many years. And when the kids were old enough to go swimming, I worried myself to death. And one day Everett said, why don't you go down and buy a bathing suit and go down with them? That's just what I did. And then I knew my kids were okay, and I learned to I didn't get in the water very much, but it was still cold standing out on the cement. But I loved working with those kids, and I worked with them a long time. And I love working with softball, and that got a little hairy sometimes. But I did. I just love working with young people.
Did they already have a women's softball league when you moved here, or did you help start it?
No, there was no softball. I don't know when they started having softball for the girls, but we were pretty early. The VFW was pretty early into it, and we had a team, and I can't remember. It seems like to me they gave me $20 a year or something to buy supplies, and we picked. I bought the baseballs and stuff with that, and threw in a few pennies of my own, I guess. But I thought it was good for me, and I thought it was good for the girls. There again, I knew where my girls were. I knew they were busy. And although sometimes I think they did not like the 4-H work, I thought it was really very beneficial for them, because I thought public speaking was one of the most important things that they could do, and I think they did very well with it. They did took clothing to state, but the thing that probably I was most proud of was the fact that they could get up in front of an audience and talk. and they can still do that today. That's been a long time. End of the story.
But you were also in a bowling league, and you did.
What?
You were also in a bowling league. And
Yeah.
It's a bridge that was okay for women to do.
Oh yeah, yeah. They had the bowling alley had lots of women bowlers, and I bowled on every Tuesday morning, and I liked that. I stayed with bowling until my back started acting up, and then I had to quit. I had a pretty good average. I can't remember. I think my average is probably around 150, something like that. I've had about 3 or 4 200 games. I like bowling. I liked all activities. I just didn't, yeah. I just kind of liked life most of the time. I got aggravated. Oh, I can tell you when we moved, when we sold the funeral home on 12th and D Street, it was we needed to get out there, and I said to Everett one day something about selling this place, and he said, if you can sell it, go ahead and sell it. And so I did. I just called Jim Atkinson and had him come up, and I think he appraised it for $19,000. I'm not sure, but I think that's what it was. And we sold it, and didn't have Everett had been drawing up plans for a new house. Then he built a little small replica of this house he was going to build. But something went wrong on the way to town, and we wound up renting a little brick house on 10th Street, and I told this little man, I said, we told him, we just want this probably for 6 months. We're going to build a house. And we stayed there about 6 years before we ever bought this house. So we looked at this house, and number one of them, I said, we looked at this house, and I saw this open room with a kitchen where I could see my kids, and I'd missed that all the time in this little house. 6 years, and I was always in the kitchen cooking, and they were out in the living room talking and laughing and having fun, and I really missed that. So when I saw this, I thought, I like that. So we got in the car, and then we drove around the block, and he saw the back of it, and he said, I'm not going to buy that house with that fence. And I said, that's what I like about that. When these grandkids come, and it really was a good old fence, kept my kids in. But I loved it because the kitchen was open to the family room, and I could enjoy cooking and being with the family, and that was important. That was good. Ruth wants me to tell you about cotton, and I'll just tell you about one of the reasons I hate to farm. Cotton and corn. You planted it like, say, 3 or 4 grains in a hill, and then when it came up and got to about a certain stage, you chopped one of the plants down. Like, say, if you had 3, then you'd go through all of those rows, and you'd take one out. So then the 2 would grow stronger. And then when it got at a certain stage, we had to go through it again and cut it down to 1. And Daddy thought that seems to make the best plant. Cotton's a beautiful plant, takes a lot of work, but it's a beautiful plant, and when the blooms comes on it, as they age, they gradually change colors, and then they'll kind of shrivel up and turn to nothing. And under that nothing is a little cotton boll, and it grows until it gets, I don't know, probably this, not as big as a golf ball, and it's green. And then as it ripens, it turns brown, and it splits into about 6 little quarters, I guess. But this time it's the bowls are really brown, and the tips of them are really prickly. And then when it gets ripe and ready to pick, you go in with your fingers like that, and you pick all of those up, and all of those up. I wouldn't know how many hundreds it took to make a pound, but that's what we did all fall, all summer. And then when school would start, we always had so much cotton that we would go to school in the summertime, the farmers' kids, and then the town kids would go in the fall, and they would go clear through. But we got off a month, I think, maybe 6 weeks, to pick the cotton and stuff. And then we would go back. But we never got to go on time because there was always cotton to pick. And Daddy said, "That's okay, you're smart enough, you'll catch up." And we did. That's kind of the way we did. But I never learned geometry because I had lost those first few weeks. And then come Christmas, what money we had for Christmas basically was we would go to those cotton stalks and we'd strip them with our hands, and then they'd take that to the gin, and there'd be little tidbits of cotton in there, and that was usually what we kind of had to, maybe for whatever, Christmas. I don't know, but we all do that. And you know, it was really tough on your hands. Sometimes we had gloves so that you wouldn't cut your fingers and stuff. But those cotton crops aren't anymore. By the time I left, the cotton was grown the same way, but it wasn't cared for the same way, and you didn't hand pick it. You don't hand pick it anymore at all. And corn was the same way. We had a few fights, picking the corn and throwing it and hitting each other. That was about the only fights we had. And every Sunday, though, every single Sunday, we'd all get in the wagon and we'd go to church. But 6 days a week you worked. You worked all day long, 6 days a week, but Sunday you did not work. We'd go to church and we'd come home and have dinner. Sometimes we'd get to go and share dinner with other people. That was our week. And I can't remember when we ever bought a car, because we didn't have one for a long time after we moved to Oklahoma. I suppose that little old Model T Ford or whatever it was, Model A, but we didn't have a car for a long time. And so, I don't know.
What did you
Peanuts, I loved the peanut crop. Peanuts is another beautiful crop. Just, the plants are beautiful. And when they get to a certain stage in growth, when they're ready, you pull up the whole stalk and turn it upside down. And the peanuts are laying all around. And we grew Tennessee red peanuts, and the peanuts were as red as they could be, and there was 4 to 6 peanuts in every nodule. And when they got, I want to say ripe, but that's not the right word for it, but ready, when they were good and when they were ready to eat, then you would take them and kind of wash them in the creek, kind of, and pick them all off. Well, they were wonderful. We had lots of peanuts. We had lots of pecans down there. I still like pecans too. So that's the end of that story.
What did you do for Christmas? What did you do for Christmas?
Christmas was wonderful. We had a library table, and on Christmas there was usually a few nuts and an apple and or an orange. And we had usually, I guess, one little gift, but that's what we had. Extras was one apple and sometimes an apple and an orange. Never had a banana. I don't know what a banana was. But I can remember I was probably a sophomore in high school or something. What would that be, about 14 or something? Well, of course we had a car by that time. And Mom and Daddy went to Muskogee, and she bought some presents for us. And I don't know if we had a flat tire or what, but it was night, and Daddy stopped at this filling station, stopped at some store, and when they got back to the car, there was no gifts in it. And Mama just cried and cried because somebody had stolen the gifts out of the car. So we didn't have any presents at all that year. But I remember one of the first times that I ever bought a Christmas present. I had a nickel to spend, and I think I bought everybody a comb. I know some of my nickels was spent on combs, and that was the first time that I had any Christmas money to spend. And I remember one time I got a little celluloid doll for Christmas, and it had 5 cents marked on its feet. I loved that little old doll too. So, you know, you're talking Christmas presents, 5 cents. Maybe one of the first gifts that I had that I really thought was super was when I was a senior in high school, and Thelma was married and living in, no, she wasn't married then, but she was living in Muskogee. And she bought me these green shoes. Oh, how I thought those were something special. And I don't remember where I got that jersey dress, but I've got a picture of me in it sometime. And I thought I was the best dressed kid on the block. I had this pretty dress and I had green shoes to go with it. And Thelma bought me those. We were laughing about that in Tulsa the other day when we were down there. And she was talking about when her and Clayton got married and stuff. And I reminded her that she had given me those green shoes. See, there again, you don't measure. I mean, she just came home with a pair of shoes. So I can't remember if I was telling her then or the group was sitting there. Maybe that was here about, I was telling them about those blue shoes that I bought for you. You remember when I was over to North Platte and I came home with those neat blue patent leather shoes? Oh, and I made you a little dress that perfect though. Oh God, I hope you kids have as much fun when you are grown and got grandkids that you can look back and tell your life. And I hope your life is as good as ours been. We, growing up, we didn't have any money, and when we first got married and got in this funeral home, we didn't have any money. And even when Lana went to college and Ann went to college, we didn't have a heck of a lot, but we had enough to send you to college. And then when Ruth and Reba went, we had a little more money, but I would not buy you those extra things because I didn't have them for Lana and Ann. And I thought, they did okay, you can go okay too. And but I don't know that anybody could have a better life than I've had. I don't know if anybody could have better children than I've had or had been any more proud of them than I am of you kids. And I just want you to know that.
Thank you.
That's just the end of my story.
Well, that's good, because we've about used up this whole tape.
Because what?
We've used the whole tape.
Oh, you're kidding. Oh, gosh.
We've used
I want to tell you children how we got our shoes, and the story about the shoes. Every fall, Mom and Daddy would go down to town, to Shakota, and early on they went in a wagon, and they would get a pair of shoes for every one of us. Somehow they always fit, and when they got home, why, we would put them on and get up on the dining room table, and they would feel around and see if they were okay. I don't remember ever having to take a pair back, and these were the only shoes we had for a whole year. We got a new pair of shoes in the fall, and they went through the winter, and then by spring they were worn out, and as soon as it was warm enough to be outside barefooted, that was the end of the shoes, and we were barefooted the rest of the summer. There was no getting but the one pair of shoes, and I remember I was a good-sized kid when the sole of my shoe came off. They always bought good shoes. Seems like to me they might have been Buster Brown's, but they were good leather shoes. But this sole came off, and so Daddy took a baling wire and a ice pick and punched holes in the sole and in the shoe, and he put baling wire up through there and twisted it, and that's how I lasted the rest of the season with my shoes. And one day when I got on the school bus, I accidentally scraped one of the girls' legs, and she really got mad, and they made fun of me because I had wire in my shoes. Guess it didn't hurt because I kept going, but I think it was amazing that they could go down just once a year and buy our shoes. The fact that we only had one pair was okay. They were good shoes, and we took care of them. And that's all. I guess that's all I remember about the shoes. Only about mine. I don't remember the rest of the kids. But that was a big day when your new shoes came home. For birthdays, we always had a hot cake. My poor mother would do the dishes after she'd fix her breakfast, and she'd do the dishes, and then she would go to the field and work until about 11 o'clock in the morning. Then she would walk home and fix our lunch. And every birthday we had a hot cake with frosting on it. Sometimes we had ice cream, homemade ice cream, especially in the wintertime. We used snow. We went out in the yard and picked up snow, and then we poured cream, separated cream in it, and sugar, and that was our ice cream. But in the summertime, we had some ice, or in the spring, they'd crack the ice on the pond, and that was the ice we had. And we had, that was the only parties we had, was just that special lunch and always a hot cake. No, it was so good. But, and Mother never used a recipe. She never used a recipe for anything. She never used a pattern. As far as I know, she was a wonderful seamstress. She never had a pattern as far as I know all of those years. But we'd use the catalog, and the girls would pick out what they'd want. And she'd get the fabric and just sit down and cut it, make their clothes. And then I was so little that she'd take the scraps and usually make me a dress out of the scraps. And it didn't matter. I can't remember my sisters, Lois and Thelma, ever having a ready-made dress. Mother always made them. And once she made Thelma an all-around pleated skirt. It was perfect. My mother would have been a professional seamstress if there was such a thing, because she was that perfect. When my brother Spellman graduated from, would have been, I guess, the 12th grade, she made him a white shirt. Didn't have a pattern, but she made him a white shirt, and he was the only one that had a white shirt. So I could go on and on about my mother being a good seamstress and a good cook and a wonderful mother. She was absolutely fantastic. I think if I could even been a half as good as Mother, I would have been really pleased with myself as a mother. So I do hope, kids, that you children, that you know that I tried hard, we tried hard to set examples for you and teach you right from wrong. And then the other thing that we really pushed was education. Education. Mother and Dad, I believe both of them went through the 12th grade. I don't think many people had any college then. But I always remember telling you children that when you graduate from high school, your education is just beginning. And I thank you very much for following through, because every one of you got an education, and I think you liked the areas that you were educated in. And like I said in another little short episode of this, we just could not be more proud of you kids. We just could not be more proud. And I want you to know that we weren't perfect. We tried hard. Sometimes we made mistakes, but I think maybe we did more things right for you than the mistakes we made. And so I hope you all remember that whatever we did and the decisions we made was for you, hoping that it would make life easier for you. And so if we made a mistake, it was not intentional. And there was one other thing, our what we did for fun.
Yeah.
We didn't have any toys. I don't remember ever having a toy, just that little one little doll, celluloid doll. It was 5 cents marked on the bottom. I was sneaky. I found that little doll before Christmas. Mom always hid them under the things under the bed, and so I knew I was getting that little doll. But for fun, we would get together and toss a ball over the roof. And if you can imagine these big houses today tossing a ball over the roof, and then you catch it and you come around the house and try to hit each other. That was one game we played. We played a lot of marbles, and I just can't remember. We probably had as much fun as anybody else. We had as much food and good food. We had more love than anybody else, I think. But games and toys and things was never a part of our life. There was no money for it, and so that's all we knew. We were happy with it. We were happy. And, you know, we look at that you children today, I try to do much more for you than I did. I sewed outfit for you every Christmas, and that was a part of your Christmas. And we gave you at least one good toy. I think I loved picking out the dolls for you girls. Pretty dolls, not the funny dolls that kind of came to pass later. But we tried that for Christmas, and tried to make your Christmas better than ours. But when I see you children buying all these toys and expensive games and stuff for your kids, I just think, oh my goodness, I don't know what you're doing, but that's okay. You've done a really, really good job with your kids, and we appreciate it.
One time you told me about...
What?
One time you told me about your brother and sister, how they would get home from college. One of them hitchhiked.
Oh, Spelman and Thelma?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Spelman and Thelma was in school at the same time. Or, Spelman was in college when Thelma went there. And
what college?
They worked at a restaurant for their food. And then they would come home when they got a suitcase full of dirty clothes. And my brother Spelman, in those days, if you had a sticker on your suitcase, a college sticker, anybody would pick you up. And so they'd stuff all the dirty clothes in Thelma's suitcase and buy a ticket for her. And then he would thumb his way home. That's what you called it, thumb his way home. Sometimes he'd beat her. And then Mama would beat her home. And Mama would do all the washing and the ironing, and then they would go back, and he would hitchhike back. That's how they got home, and they both graduated from college. And one thing with relation to education is my oldest sister and I are the only ones that has at least one degree. Most of my brothers have masters, and one of them has went for his doctorate, but he got mad because they kept criticizing it and marking his paper up, and he finally decided he didn't need it. And so college, higher education was always, even in my family, it was something that you needed to achieve. And so that's been handed down from my parents to us, and to us from you, and so far the grandkids are just doing super, so you're handing it down. And that's great.
Where did they go to college?
What?
Where did Spelman and Thelma?
I think it was called Northwestern State College, and it was at Tahlequah, Oklahoma. Shelby and Ewan and J.F. went to Stillwater. It was called Oklahoma A&M then. And they graduated, at least two of them, same day, because they were all in service, and losing the years, and they caught up. And I know two of them graduated from Oklahoma A&M the same day. J.F. went on, and he was worked in agriculture. He was a home extension agent. And after he served in two small towns in Kansas, and during that time he was still working, the law was passed that they had to have a master's. And so he drove back and forth to Oklahoma and got his master's. That was his livelihood. And Shelby and Ewan were math teachers. Ewan, after he quit, or after he had his tenure as a teacher in Joplin, he started teaching at the junior college, math at the junior college. and but their area was always math. So that was my brother. And Thelma, I don't know what she got her degree in, but when she got her first job, why, they told her that she would be a basketball coach. She said, I've never played basketball. I don't play sports. Well, you'll be the girls' basketball coach. And so she was the girls' basketball coach. And my oldest brother, Spellman, loved sports, and he also was a coach. And he coached girls' basketball. That was big in Oklahoma for the schools. Football was not a big sport at all in high school. But girls' basketball was big. And if you had a basketball game, if you didn't have a girls' game scheduled, there wouldn't be anybody come hardly. And I don't really know why. I didn't even give it a thought. But nobody would come if it was just a boys' game. So there was always a girls' game and a boys' game. And my brother Spellman took his girls quite a ways. One time they had a game on the west side of Tulsa. I've forgotten what little town. Mom and Daddy usually would go and see the games. Left us kids at home, and that was a scary time to be at home alone, even though we were safe. It was scary to be alone because there was no such thing as a babysitter. We were all babysitters. Well, we were big kids, but just the same, it was a scary feeling to know that Mom and Daddy was gone and we were all alone. But my folks, most of them all enjoyed sports, and I did. I absolutely loved it. When I came up to the university to go to college, I was telling Everett, I said, now I want to go into PE. And he said, what are you thinking about? There's nothing to physical education. I said, I want to be a basketball coach. And he just thought that was awful. And so, of course, I don't know what I took. I know I took a piddling little music class. And I did. No, this music class was in high school. And that was a funny story. I had never, even as far as I know, touched a piano. And one of the first things we had to do in this music class was to compose a little number. And so I just took my little paper and made my little signs, and I'd put this and C and D and whatever. I have not a clue. I'd never touched a piano. So my music class, I'm not sure what that gal gave me, but I did okay in school. And I think there was probably maybe 8 or 10 in my 8th grade class, very few of us. Anyway, I was valedictorian, and I got to stand up and make a little speech at graduation. And then when we went to high school, we all had buses. We rode buses from day one. And then the buses would pick up everybody and drive to a certain corner, and all the high school kids that was on the bus would get on a bus, and all of their grade school kids would get on our bus, and then we'd go to different schools. And so that's different than you kids had. And when I went to Shakota to high school, I was dumbfounded that I had all these kids. I think there was 107 class in our class. And yeah, it was a scary feeling, but that's okay. And I did okay.
Had you moved to Shakota by then, or did you have to come from? Did you have to come in from the farm to Shakota, or had you moved
from the farm to Shakota? Oh yeah, we got on the bus and you rode it. It had a route like they do today, and they picked up, like I said, they picked up everybody, every student. And then when we got to this certain little corner, the kids split, and one bus went into to Shakota, and the other bus went to high school called Victor. And I spent 3 years in high school in Shakota. All the time I wanted to play basketball, and all the time they wouldn't allow it. But when I got to Council Hill, the rules had changed. And so, as I told earlier, when I got to Council Hill, I got to play basketball, and that's kind of what I lived for. And Reba and I have talked different times. I've told her, Reba, when are you going to quit playing volleyball? And she's not ready to give up. But I told her, I said, whenever I graduated from high school, I didn't know whether life would be beyond basketball, because I loved it that much. But it's just a short period in your life, and you make the best of it.
Why did you do your senior year in college?
Why?
Why did you go to Council Hill for your senior?
Well, we moved. Daddy, that was the first farm that Daddy bought. And I'll tell you about that farm today. Daddy didn't have this big education, but he had a few smarts. And when he sold this farm and bought a house in Shakota, he kept the mineral rights. He kept, I think, of 25% of the mineral rights. And we have gotten some checks with that. Plus, there's still a chance of finding oil and or gas, because there's a gas, big gas, composite of gas, probably 2 or 3 miles from there. I think Billy Ruth's dad, that was his occupation, that was his area of making a living. And so Ewan's keeping track of that. But I think that was a very wise decision for Daddy. I didn't give it a thought at the time, but he kept part of the mineral rights. And this is something that up here, you don't have mineral rights. You don't have that. And the first time I got a little check and went down to Custer Federal with it, they didn't know what to do with it. It was totally new. So this may come out to be a good thing for you kids in later years. We'll just wait and see.
You told us about typhoid fever. Do you remember?
I told about that.
Do you remember any other illnesses?
No, we didn't. There was no such thing as going to a doctor, really. Spellman had a bad accident once. He was coming home from a car. This would have been, I guess, when he was in college. He was a big boy. And somehow they hit a rut or something, and it threw him off of the fender into a fence, a barbed wire fence or something, and cut his face all around. That might have been JF. I should have written a lot of this stuff down. I didn't know Ruth was going to bring this home. But Spellman was in an accident too and had a huge scar on his face. As far as I know, he did not go to the doctor. And this was Spellman, and JF was the one, the wagon wheel ran over his forehead. And it was terrible. It was terrible, and he still always had a big dent in his head. He never went to the doctor. But it was a bad accident. There was no such thing as going to the doctor. My mother had bad teeth, and they would either come out, or she did go to the dentist and have some pulled, because she had infection so bad in her body. And so they pulled her teeth. But when you children go to the dentist today just to have your teeth cleaned and stuff, you think back like that. I don't remember ever having a toothbrush until I was really big. We took little twigs from a tree, I've forgotten what the name of it was, and you peeled the bark off of it, and you chewed it and chewed it and chewed it until it was, I believe, hundreds of little things, and that's what you use for a toothbrush. And I'm going to tell you, it worked better than the ones today because of the short stem. You could get it inside your mouth and brush, and that was all the toothbrush I had till I don't know when. No toothpaste. We used soda for toothpaste, and just knowledge of medicine and the cures you had were nil. We took turpentine, I think it was like 2 or 3 drops of turpentine, and put it on a teaspoon of sugar, and we took that, and that was supposed to clean out your stomach like for worms, because we ate pork. And the pigs ate the slop kind of stuff. And so there was things called some sort of worms. So that was our medicine for our stomach, was the turpentine dropped on sugar. I see Ruth just making all these funny things. And, I don't remember when I ever went to the doctor. Maybe the first time I really went to the doctor was when I was working at the Bone and Joint Hospital in Oklahoma City. And they decided that somebody decided they needed my tonsils out, and so I went over to and I had to walk because we sure didn't have a car, over a few blocks or someplace to a dentist office, sit in a chair, and I can still feel that needle going into, I suppose, soft tissue. And he took my tonsils out, and we're going to walk back to the hospital and stay all day, or stay that night. And Thelma said, Duty, I think we ought to get a cab. And so we did. She took me back to the hospital in a cab. And I stayed at the hospital all night, and then I went home. Now, I think that was my first experience with a doctor. And then my next experience that I remember with a doctor was when we were in, he was in Mortician College in St. Louis. And I had a job in this Cadillac place I told you. And oh, I got a terrible side ache. Oh, I tell you. So finally they decided that I needed to go to the doctor. And I don't know how we picked his name, probably out of a hat. And we went there. And I guess he did a little lab work. But the thing that I remember most was he said, well, you go home, and if you're alive in the morning, it's not appendicitis. And that was the end of that story. Now, and about a month ago, I got this horrific pain, really horrific. And so I left Bridge Club, and Everett took me down to Dr. Lawrence. And so in comparison to what this doctor did and she did, they immediately did lab work, blood work, urinalysis, and it did not show appendicitis at all, but that's what they were thinking, it was appendicitis. And then she did some other work. She did some other work, and she just said, now appendicitis doesn't usually get bad, or was bad, and then get better and bad again. She said, in the morning it could be progressive, and you could have appendicitis. But I told her that little story about the doctor in St. Louis saying that if you're alive in the morning, it's not appendicitis. And I said, I appreciate for what you did today.
So when you had your tonsils out, you had your tonsils out in one place, and then you went to the hospital to stay? You didn't have them out in the hospital?
Oh, no. You went in a chair. And I just sat up in this big chair, and I can remember seeing this needle. It had a long thing, but oh, I can remember it ripping through tissues. It was not vibrating, but echoing in my ear. And he took them out. And today I still have tonsil tags, I'm sure, because he didn't get it all out. And I rarely ever touch popcorn because the hulls lodge down.
Did they give you any anesthesia?
Nope. Just that, he just shot that in. I don't know what it was. I suppose it was a little bit of an anesthetic of some kind. No. And I just went back to the hospital and stayed in bed. I mean, I worked there, so I stayed in bed. The next day I was good to go.